The Department of Energy, DOE, is responsible for some of the nation's most sensitive programs. These programs are critical to our country's economic well-being and national defense. Protecting the national security of the United States is an integral requirement of our mission at DOE. Critical to this requirement is the protection of classified matter. You are receiving the security briefing today because you have been issued a DOE Access Authorization, otherwise known as a security clearance. Upon receipt of a DOE security clearance, and before you are granted initial access to classified information or matter, you are required to complete a DOE security briefing. This briefing, along with the accompanying written briefing materials you received today, are designed to fulfill the briefing requirement. With the advent of nuclear weapons and their enormous destructive capability, the United States recognized the need to establish a special classification system to ensure that its nuclear secrets were well protected. On August 1, 1946, President Harry S. Truman signed the Atomic Energy Act of 1946, which established the category of classified information known as restricted data, or RD. The Act transferred control of the nation's nuclear weapons and research and development efforts to civilian control and gave the Atomic Energy Commission, or AEC, now the Department of Energy, unilateral authority over this information. As such, only those individuals cleared by the AEC could have access to restricted data. Restricted data is all data concerning design, manufacture, or utilization of atomic weapons, production of special nuclear material, or use of special nuclear material in the production of energy, but excluding data declassified or removed from the restricted data category pursuant to Section 142 of the Atomic Energy Act. Special nuclear material, or SNM, includes plutonium, uranium-233, and uranium enriched in isotope 235. A few examples of restricted data are nuclear weapon dimensions, drawings, and blueprints, nuclear testing information, uranium enrichment technology, laser isotope separation, chemical processing of tritium and plutonium, and space reactor power systems. At the end of World War II, the United States had almost completely depleted its existing stock of atomic weapons. Major efforts were underway to increase production of SNM and assemble new weapons. As time progressed, a stockpile of weapons was produced, and the military was eager to have these weapons transferred to its control. However, the slow AEC clearance process substantially reduced the number of military personnel who could have access to these weapons. The clearance process was lengthy and included a complete background investigation. In some cases, military enlistments were up before clearances were granted. As the number of nuclear weapons in the inventory grew, the military assumed a greater role in storing, maintaining, and planning for the use of nuclear weapons. Most of the personnel involved needed access to the less sensitive military utilization of nuclear weapons information, not design information. Unfortunately, the Atomic Energy Act of 1946 did not distinguish between design and utilization of nuclear weapons. Therefore, everyone needed a Q security clearance. In recognition of the need to make certain atomic energy information more accessible to the United States military, Congress revised the Atomic Energy Act in 1954. They addressed this problem by establishing another category of classified information called Formally Restricted Data, or FRD. This revision of the Act allowed DoD personnel access to FRD with DoD security clearances thereby relieving the logjam of Q security clearances. The DOE and DOD have joint responsibility over FRD. Formally restricted data is classified information jointly determined by the DOE or its predecessor agencies and DOD to be related primarily to the military utilization of atomic weapons and protected as national security information. It is subject to the restrictions on transmission to other countries and regional defense organizations that apply to restricted data. Although the word formally implies the information may no longer be classified, formally restricted data remains classified. FRD is classified information that deals primarily with the military utilization of atomic weapons. A few examples of FRD are nuclear weapons stockpile quantities, nuclear weapons safety and storage, nuclear weapon yield and effects, and nuclear weapons storage and deployment locations. Classified matter is any material or document or combination thereof containing classified information. This includes explosives whose shape is classified and classified parts. 3 requirements must be satisfied before you are authorized to access classified matter: a favorable determination of eligibility for access by an agency head based on a personnel security investigation, and you have been granted a security clearance. You have signed an approved non-disclosure agreement, and you have a need to know the classified information. As an employee of the federal government or one of its contractors, you are required to undergo a personnel security investigation prior to being issued a DOE security clearance. The purpose of this investigation was to determine your trustworthiness to access classified information. When the investigation was completed, DOE granted you a Q or L security clearance based on a favorable determination of the investigation results. You are required to sign a classified information non-disclosure agreement, standard form SF-312, prior to your initial access to classified information. The SF-312 is a contractual agreement between the U.S. government and you, as a cleared individual, in which you agree never to disclose classified information to an unauthorized person. Its primary purpose is to inform you of the trust that is placed in you by providing you access to classified information, your responsibilities to protect that information from unauthorized disclosure, and the consequences that may result from your failure to meet those responsibilities. Additionally, by establishing the nature of this trust, your responsibilities, and the potential consequences of non-compliance in the context of a contractual agreement, if you violate that trust, the United States will be better able to prevent unauthorized disclosure or to discipline you for such a disclosure by initiating a civil, administrative, or legal action. At the conclusion of this security briefing, you will be given a copy of the SF-312 to read and sign. The third requirement for access to classified information is need to know. That is, you must have a need to know the information in order to perform your official duties or assist in a lawful and authorized governmental function. The holder of classified information to which you seek access is responsible for confirming your identity, your security clearance level, and your need to know. As a holder of classified information, you are responsible for making these same determinations with respect to any individual to whom you may disclose it. Check with your supervisor or your agency's security office if you have any doubt as to an individual's need to know. No person may have access to classified information unless he or she has been granted a security clearance equal to or higher than the classification level and category of the information and the requisite need to know. Additionally, no person is entitled to access classified information solely by virtue of their rank, office, position, or security clearance. Members of Congress are not exempt from fulfilling the need to know requirement. DOE issues Q and L access authorizations. An access authorization is an administrative determination made by DOE that an individual is eligible to access classified matter or is eligible for access to or control over special nuclear material. Although DOE uses the term access authorization, it is the same as a security clearance. Therefore, for the purpose of this briefing, we will continue to use the words security clearance. Prior to today's briefing, you were granted either a Q or L security clearance by DOE. In conjunction with this briefing, you will be told which clearance level you have been granted. A Q or L security clearance authorizes an individual to access specific levels and categories of classified information. DOE has issued you either a Q or L security clearance based on a favorable determination of the personnel security investigation results, as well as your need to know the classification level and category of specific classified information. This table depicts the classification level and categories of information that an individual is authorized to access based on his or her security clearance. Individuals who have been issued a Q security clearance are authorized to access up to top secret restricted data. Top secret is the highest classification level, and restricted data is the highest classification category. The highest classification level individuals who are issued an L security clearance are authorized to access is secret. At DOE facilities, Q and L security clearance indicators are visible on federal and contractor security badges and may be used to verify an individual's access authorization. Because DOE security badges are not worn at other federal facilities, caution should be exercised when determining whether an individual has been granted a DOE security clearance. Consult your agency security office or the DOE Office of Headquarters Security Operations for assistance in verifying an individual's security clearance level. The origin of the Q access authorization traces back to one of the first security regulations published in 1947 by the newly formed Atomic Energy Commission, AEC. This regulation established 3 types of clearances based upon an individual's required access to restricted data, or RD. At that time, individuals like you today were required to complete a Personnel Security Questionnaire, or PSQ. Certain contractor employees requiring no access to RD were immediately granted P clearances, subject only to a subsequent FBI file check. The S clearance was reserved for business persons who visited AEC installations frequently, but who would have no access to RD. All AEC employees, regardless of access to RD, and all contractor employees with access to RD required a Q clearance and a full FBI security investigation in advance of employment. Thus, the P, S, and Q clearances were born. The Q clearance is the only one of the 3 that survives today. All classified information falls within one of 3 classification levels. Top secret is the classification level assigned to information of utmost importance to the national defense and security. Unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause exceptionally grave damage to national security. Secret is the classification level applied to information for which the unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause serious damage to national security. And Confidential is the classification level applied to information for which the unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause damage to national security. All classified information falls within one of three classification categories. We have already discussed the first two categories, restricted data and formally restricted data. The third category of classified information is known as National Security Information, or NSI. NSI is any information that has been determined pursuant to Executive Order 12958, Classified National Security Information as amended, or any predecessor order to require protection against unauthorized disclosure, and that is so designated. There are significant differences between declassification and marking requirements for restricted data, formally restricted data, and national security information. The principal difference starts with the legal authority for the classification category. The authority for RD and FRD is contained within the Atomic Energy Act, whereas the authority for NSI is by executive order. The principal declassification differences are that RD and FRD documents are not subject to automatic declassification. RD documents may only be declassified by DOE reviewers, and FRD documents may only be declassified by DOE or DOD reviewers. The principal marking differences are that RD and FRD documents must have a special warning notice on the front page. They do not have automatic declassification instructions on the front page. And DOE-generated RD and FRD documents do not require portion marking. Documents containing RD or FRD must contain an appropriate warning notice or admonishment information on the front page of the document. As an individual who has been granted a DOE security clearance, you are personally responsible for the proper use, handling, storage, and protection of classified information or matter that is entrusted to you. Consult your agency security office for your approved local security procedures on generating classified documents, classification, marking, control and accountability, reproduction, transmission, storage, and destruction of classified matter. There is an increasing amount of classified information appearing without authorization in the public domain. For example, the internet, newspapers, books, interviews, etc. In such cases, commenting on the information could result in greater damage to the national security than would occur if no comment were made about it. The fact that specified classified information has appeared publicly in written or spoken format is itself classified. The fact by itself isn't protected. Only the information that would help an adversary locate the information is protected. The fact that information has appeared publicly does not make it unclassified. Therefore, if you are asked a question about the accuracy, classification, or technical merit of such information, you should respond in a way that equates to a no comment. Discretion should be applied in order to avoid using no comment at such a point that its use reveals classified information. Incidents of security concern are events which warrant reporting to the Department of Energy. As such, these incidents, as well as information bearing on a federal or contractor employee's continued eligibility for access to classified matter, must be reported to DOE. In lieu of reporting directly to DOE, you may choose to report incidents of security concern directly to your agency security office. Your agency security office will in turn report the information to DOE as appropriate. Some incidents that must be reported immediately include incidents of safeguards and security concern including those involving classified matter or special nuclear material, SNM. Criminal violations relating to DOE programs like fraud, deliberate compromise or foreign involvement in suspected compromise of classified information, or violations of security regulations. A more extensive written list of reporting requirements will be distributed to you in conjunction with this briefing. You are required to adhere to all of the reporting requirements that are applicable to you. Legal sanctions may be imposed on individuals who knowingly or willfully disregard security procedures and federal regulations. Such legal sanctions include, but are not limited to, gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information, gathering or delivering defense information to aid foreign governments, disclosure of classified information, and unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents or material. An individual who has been found guilty of one or more of these felonies may be sentenced to pay a fine of not more than $250,000 and/or may be imprisoned for any term of years or for life, or may be punished by death. Unauthorized communication of restricted data shall be punished by imprisonment for life or by imprisonment for any term of years or a fine of not more than $100,000 or both. You know, the work done by the Department of Energy is essential to the entire nation. As an individual who has been granted a DOE security clearance, you are being asked to participate in some of the most significant activities of the United States government, the protection of the nation's secrets. As such, you are personally responsible for protecting classified information and matter that is critical to the security of our nation. Now, if you have any questions regarding your security responsibilities, please contact your agency security office or the DOE Office of Headquarters Security Operations at 301-903-9990. Thank you for watching this security briefing.